Hello and welcome back to another video on high altitude investing. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Ethereum and running over how high I think Ethereum could go and also the structure that I'm seeing in this market. So we're starting off here comparing Ethereum to Amazon, and as you can see, Amazon is over here on the right and Ethereum is over here on the left. And you can see the similarities between early day Amazon and Ethereum right now. There's a lot of similarities. So we have the internet bubble over here on the right with Amazon.com, and you can see just how high Amazon went up during the internet bubble and just how big the crash that came afterwards was. And you can see the recovery that happened after the internet bubble popped when Amazon.com started to head up towards its old all-time high. Then once it hit its old all-time high, you can see a large correction in this market. Then we got a V-bottom recovery and all the way to a new all-time high. And if you look at Ethereum, it's really the same thing. Ethereum did the exact same market structure as what we see here on early day Amazon. You can see the crypto bubble over here in 2021 and 2022, and then you can see the recovery that started to happen after the bubble popped, and we get up towards our old all-time high resistance. Then we see a large correction in this market coming back down to major support, and we've already started to see a V-bottom recovery here on Ethereum, just exactly like what we saw with Amazon over here on the right. So the market is really identical in almost every single way. You can see the same structure, the same psychology. There's also a very similar thing happening with Amazon.com being part of the internet, and that as a technology being adopted by the public, and blockchain being a new technology being adopted by the public. There's parallels even more so than just from what we see in the charts, but also from a perspective of what's actually going on with both of these technologies as innovation happens, and then that innovation leads to mass adoption by the general public. So what I think is going to happen here for Ethereum is a big breakout in the bigger picture where we go up above our old all-time high resistance over here at 4,800 and the beginning of a very large increase in value for this coin. Now, this increase in value should be very parabolic, very similar to what happened to Amazon.com over here on the right, where we really go vertical up through our old all-time high and really start to take off here, not without corrections, but definitely with a lot of strength, a lot of confidence, and a lot of vertical movement for Ethereum. So be ready for a lot more upside here on Ethereum in the bigger picture as we prepare to break above our old all-time high resistance. If we do get above our old all-time high resistance, then that's really a clear signal that we are headed into a big bull market for Ethereum. Now, a lot of people will try to wait for a breakout, but really the best strategy is to accumulate as early as possible. That's why I've been making so many videos about crypto. Well, it's been undervalued all through this entire period because crypto really is set up for a big increase in value. And the earlier that you can get in on the market, the better off you're going to be. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about the fractal between Ethereum and Amazon, a lot of people are wondering how high Ethereum could go before we see a top. Now, I'm not going to try to call the top, but I will give you some Fibonacci extensions to be looking at for Ethereum, some areas to be watching for a local peak, a potential high on Ethereum. Now, the setup that we see here with Ethereum is actually very similar to what happened to Bitcoin as Bitcoin went all the way to 20,000 per coin. Then we saw a local top on Bitcoin in 2018 at 20,000 per coin, and it came all the way back down to 3. So the areas that I'm kind of watching for Ethereum based on the Fibonacci extensions for wave 5 is between 10,000 and $20,000 per coin. So if we measure from the bottom of wave 1 to the top of wave 1 and back down to the bottom of wave 2, then we can look at these Fibonacci extensions and get an idea of where Ethereum could top out in this cycle. Now, when I say this cycle, it could be a bigger, longer, more extended cycle that doesn't top out in the next year, but could take a little longer to top out. So the last 2 cycles we saw were very short-lived, and topped out pretty quickly. But if this really is mass adoption for crypto, we could see a longer, more sustained cycle in these markets. Now, what we see here for Ethereum is wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. Now, this does follow all of the rules of Elliott wave theory because technically wave 4 cannot go below the top of wave 1 except in a wick, and that's exactly what we see here is a wick on the bottom of wave 4. So what we can see for a potential target is around $10,000 would be our lowball target for Ethereum. But really what can happen here in the bigger picture, with crypto, a lot of times we see extended fifth waves. So if we get an extended fifth wave like we have seen in historical cycles, especially 2017 had a very large extended fifth wave, we could go all the way to $20,000 per coin here on Ethereum before topping out in its major cycle, which would be the 13618 Fibonacci extension, which is a very similar area that Bitcoin topped out. So if you look at Bitcoin, we pull up Bitcoin over here on the right and we look at the extensions on Bitcoin, you will see that Bitcoin did a very similar thing back in the day in one of its earlier cycles. Obviously, Bitcoin is more established now. It's bigger now, and so it looks a little bit different than it did early on. But back in the day, early on in its cycle, it did a very similar thing as what happened to Ethereum over here. And you can see basically what Bitcoin did was a parabolic run all the way to a new all-time high, where Bitcoin went clear up towards the 13618 Fibonacci extension and then topped out for a major bear market. So you could see a very large parabolic run here on Bitcoin before Bitcoin finally topped out at these really, really high extensions. It almost went all the way to the 16618, not quite, but pretty close before Bitcoin finally topped out in its major parabolic run. So if this really is the mass adoption phase for crypto, like everything is set up for, all of the institutional money, all of the charts are showing it, this really is set up for a mass adoption phase, we could see as high as $20,000 per Ethereum, or even a little bit higher here. It could go as high as $22,000 before we see a major bear market on this coin. So that means very big things are coming in the bigger picture for Ethereum based on all of the charts, based on what we're seeing happening in this landscape of crypto with big institutions adopting this technology and with them putting all of the infrastructure in place for the mass adoption of the public as well. So we have very big things coming in these markets. So let's talk just a little bit about the shorter time frame as well. We did just break through local resistance here on Ethereum. So we could go higher here if we keep pushing up through this local resistance area. We could push up a lot higher here on Ethereum. V-bottom recoveries generally do happen very quickly, where the recovery happens just as quick as the crash did. And this crash happened pretty fast. It was a pretty quick drawdown. So we could have a very quick recovery. That's the nature of V-bottom recoveries, not without corrections along the way up, as we've already been seeing, but definitely a very quick recovery should be expected here for Ethereum on the daily candlesticks. And once we get above this local resistance of $4,000 per coin and the old all-time high resistance of $4,900 per coin, or about 4,800 actually, then we will see a lot more increase in value for this coin that should take us very parabolic, like I was talking about in the beginning of this video, where we should start to go vertical in the same way that Amazon.com did after the internet bubble popped, and then after 2008, when we had a little bit of a crash there on the chart I was showing earlier, Amazon.com broke above its old all-time high and went completely nuts in a parabolic run and really went crazy. So that's what Ethereum is set up for, especially if we can get above our local resistance here at around 4,100 per coin and above our old all-time high at around $4,800 per Ethereum. So yeah, be watching for big things coming in the Ethereum markets. It really does look identical to early day Amazon, and it's kind of crazy because Bitcoin looks identical to early day Apple computers, and I'll show you that chart real quick too. So here is early day Apple computers over here on the right, and here's Bitcoin over here on the left. And what you can see just by looking at these two charts is just how similar early day Apple computers is to Bitcoin currently. You can see all of the institutional money here early on in the cycle before Apple really went full force in its bull market and just it went crazy here and straight vertical. You can see there was a lot of volume, a lot of institutional accumulation and preparation for that run. And you can see the exact same thing over here on Bitcoin as well. We have a bunch of volume over here on Coinbase, massive institutional accumulation. The same kind of uptrend is forming over here on Bitcoin is what we see with early day Apple. And the charts are really pretty much identical in every single way. So Bitcoin is kind of like the early day Apple, and Ethereum is kind of like the early day Amazon. So that's really what we're seeing in these charts. It's cool to see a repeat of innovation happening in the world, the internet being a new technology and being able to look at the charts associated with the internet and with home computing, and then to be able to look at blockchain as a technology and to look at these charts as well and to see the similarities between blockchain being adopted and becoming a household name. And it's really cool to see the similarities between both of those technologies as they were adopted by the public. So yeah, that's my view on Ethereum. Big things are coming for Ethereum. Be ready for a big parabolic run in this cycle that should take us all the way to a new all-time high and to levels that a lot of people are just simply not looking for right now. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something. If you did, make sure you apply for my one-on-one coaching. Link in the description box below. I'll hop on a phone call with you and talk a little bit about how one-on-one coaching can change your life, how it can improve your investing. I know it can seem hard to make money in these markets. You can feel frustrated buying highs, selling lows, watching all these coins take off with massive gains happening, and you might not be invested in that coin. So that's why I created the one-on-one coaching to make it easy for you guys to start consistently making money in these markets without a lot of effort. So yeah, make sure you apply for that. Again, the link is in the description box below, and I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos. I love you, I appreciate you, and as always, stay profitable out there.